I'm Heather from the Sewing Loft, and one of my favorite things to do is to share easy tips and tricks to help make you a better sewer. Today we're going to work on this makeup roll. It's perfect for your brushes and we'll be highlighting special techniques. One is this adjustable bias foot. It's perfect for making tiny little details stand out. Another is this fabric folding pen, but my favorite is the freezer paper that's straight from your kitchen. Let's get started. So when we turn it over, you can see that the back is pieced. It might look complicated, but I promise it's really simple. We're going to take straight strips of fabric and stitch them together to create our pattern. And once we have enough, we're going to cut it out on an angle. Let's start by piecing and head on over to the machine. We're going to put our fabric together right sides facing. And since this is a joining seam, I'm actually going to reduce my stitch length. I'm going to take it down from 2.5 to 2. Basically, we're just making it shorter and keeping it nice and tight. After you've stitched it, you want to give it a good press. You're going to flip it open and we're going to take our seam allowance and press it to the dark side. Continue to add fabrics in an alternating pattern and pressing as you go. And don't forget to press after each seam. And if you're using light and dark fabrics like I am, don't forget to press your seam allowance to the dark side. Clearly I still have a few more to do, but this gives you an idea. You're going to lay the batting over it and cut all around. After I've cut it out, I added some simple top stitching on my dark strips. I did it on the top and bottom rows just for uniformity. When you're finished, you're going to end up with a piece that looks like this. So now that the back's finished, let's get started on making the pockets. Grab your fabric for your pocket and your piece of decor bond. You want to line the decor bond up against the bottom edge and iron it in place. Make sure you have the shiny side down. That's the part with the adhesive. To make sure your pocket's to size, we're going to flip it over again. You're going to fold the wrong side of the fabric over and expose the right side. This is going to give the inside of the pocket a clean finished look. What we're doing now is cutting this piece along the top. It's created with a piece of bias fabric. If you're not sure what bias is, it's the 45-degree angle of your fabric. The easiest way to do that is to fold your fabric from corner to corner. Doesn't matter if you have a 10-inch piece of fabric or a yard piece of fabric, you will still find bias. It is this center point right here, and if you're using 100% cotton, it stretches. That's how you know you've got the right spot. I'm going to cut a 2-inch wide strip by lining up my ruler right along the edge and giving it another quick pass. Now we're going to head on over to the iron and press this up. To give me a clean edge on my bias, I need to turn under my seam allowance. I'm going to use my fabric folding pen and line it up against my ruler and mark my fold line. So I'm going to do that to the other side, bring it over to the iron, press it, and get ready to go. After you've pressed it, this is what your finished bias will look like. You can see that they're kissing in the center. Sometimes feeding your bias through can be tricky, so I've found that if you cut this to a point, it makes the process a lot easier. On a bias foot like this, it's easier to coax your fabric through first. You're going to slide it right through and see it come under from the back side of your foot. Now it's time to put this on your machine. You may have noticed that it has a little anklet on it. That means that we have to take the shank off the machine and attach this. Be sure to tighten it down and make sure it's secure. Let's take a stitch or two to hold it all in place before we introduce our pocket. Now we're going to take our pocket and slip it right through. You want to make sure that everything is kind of lined up together. And we're going to use that hard edge of the fabric to hold it all in place. Once we put our fabric in place, you'll notice that the foot is actually a little too large for our bias, so we need to adjust it. You're going to take this slider on the side and just push it forward. To reduce it, you're going to turn it towards you. To make the opening larger, you're going to turn it away from you. It's really simple. We just want to make sure that the needle is lined up to the edge of our fabric. After you've got it lined up, it's time to get stitching. Let's start off and go nice and slow. You can see the foot is doing all the work here, making life really easy. It's keeping everything nice and aligned and in place. Look at how even it looks. Now that the pocket is done, let's bring it back over to our pieces and attach it to the inside. We're going to layer our pocket on the inside piece and just baste it in place. In order to keep it from shifting, I'm going to put a few pins in it. And just stitch around the sides just to keep it in place. Now's the fun part. We can customize this any way we want. I added makeup brushes, but you can do anything from pencils to crayons. Just have fun. Now that we're basted, I want to decide where my brushes are going to go. This is where the freezer paper comes in. You're going to lay it down. You can adjust this any way you want. Some of your brushes will be fat, some of them will be small. Now let's take these lines and transfer them on the fabric. I've drawn my lines on the dull side of the freezer paper and we're going to place it shiny side down. Line it up along the bottom and just iron it in place. You can also use freezer paper for transferring small shapes. It's great to attach on things like felt and cut out. But today we're going to use it just to stitch right through. Now that it's all ironed in place, I'm going to show you another sample that I've started. We're going to stitch right through the paper along each line. Before we start sewing our freezer paper, you're going to need to adjust your stitches. Remember, each time the needle goes down, we're piercing a hole, so we want them to be closer together. You're going to reduce the stitch length. I like to do 1 1/8. You can adjust it accordingly. You're just going to go down and stitch along each line. You want to back stitch at the start and stop so that when you tear away the paper, you don't rip out your seam. Once you've got all your stitches in place, we're going to actually remove the freezer paper. It just peels away really easily. The best way to tear it is to actually fold it down first, put a little crease on it, and then just rip away. You can do that for each section until you've removed them all. You can see it leaves you with a really nice, clean line. Now we're going to add some reinforcement stitches to the top edge of our pockets. This way, when you put your brush in and out, you won't have to worry about ripping a stitch. You want to do that by changing your machine to a simple zigzag. On this machine, it's number 5. You may have to check yours. I'm going to reduce my stitch width just so that it looks nice and tight. You're just going to stitch a couple of passes back and forth. And you'll continue doing it for each section. We just have a few more steps to go. Let's add our elastic. You're going to fold your elastic in half and line it up with our pocket line. You can kind of see so that it has a nice line together. You want to put a pin in it to prevent it from moving and run it through the sewing machine. Now that we've got our elastic in place, you might be wondering what it's used for. It actually closes your makeup roll. You fold it in half, and it'll keep everything nice and tight together. Now all we have to do is sandwich up our pieces. We're going to layer on our patchwork, stitch all the way around our 4 sides, leaving an opening to turn, press, turn it right side out, and top stitch. Then we're all set. Thanks so much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the makeup roll and these easy tips to help improve your sewing. I look forward to seeing you soon.